All right. Well, where we at? Looks like page 32. Let me tell you guys something. Um, I think it's a really good idea for people to allow their riding mowers to break down after 12 or 13 years, just so you can step in fresh dog shit when you're push mowing it. Every once in a while, it just puts perspective back into your life. Um, yeah, that's where I'm at today. An unemployed prophet. On December 4th, 1978, Edward Pearson was arrested for traveling by train from Inverness to Perth in Scotland without a ticket. He duly appeared in court at Perth, where he was described as an unemployed Welsh prophet and said that he had been on his way to London to warn the Minister of the Environment of an earthquake that was soon to strike Glasgow. Edward Pearson's story was duly reported in the Dundee Courier and Advertiser for December 6th under the headline, Prophet Didn't Have a Ticket. 3 years later, the Courier and Advertiser's readers were shaken in their beds by an earthquake that damaged buildings in Glasgow and other parts of Scotland. Earthquakes are a very rare phenomenon in any part of the British Isles. No questions asked. His child was due to be born in 3 months' time, but Jamie Castell, a Spanish hotel executive, heard a voice in a dream tell him that he would never see it. What? Tell him that he would never see it. Castell, convinced that he was going to die soon, took out an insurance policy for more than $100,000, 7 million pesetas, payable only in the event of his death and with no other benefits. A few weeks later, he was driving home from work at a steady 50 miles an hour when a car going in the opposite direction at over 100 miles per hour struck a safety barrier, somersaulted in midair, and landed on top of his own car. Castell and the other driver were instantly killed. The insurance company paid Mrs. Castell without delay, though normally the death of someone who had so recently taken out such a specific policy would have been investigated at length. But this incredible accident rules out any suspicion, a spokesman for the company said. A fraction of a second either way, and he would have escaped. The worst air accident in U.S. history was the crash of an American Airlines DC-10 only moments after it left the runway at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport in May 1979. Earlier that month, the disaster was unreeled in the nightmares of David Booth, left for 10 haunting nights in a row. Nightmare that came true. Night after night, David Booth had the same nightmare. First, he heard the sound of a huge engine failing. Then he saw the plane, a passenger liner belonging to American Airlines, swerve and roll into the air, plunging to the ground in a red inferno. And every day he had the nightmare 10 nights in a row. 23-year-old David, an office manager in Cincinnati, Ohio, was haunted by what he had seen. There was never any doubt to me that something was going to happen, he said. It wasn't like a dream. It was like I was standing there watching the whole thing, like watching television. On Tuesday, May 22nd, 1979, David phoned the Federal Aviation Administration at the Greater Cincinnati International Airport. He also called American Airlines and a psychiatrist at the University of Cincinnati. On May 26th, an American Airlines DC-10 jetliner crashed at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. 275 people were killed in the worst air accident in U.S. history. Damn! The Federal Aviation Administration had taken David Booth seriously enough to try to match his nightmare with the information available, but they had too little to go on. It was uncanny. And Jack Barker, public affairs officer for the FFA's southern region, there were differences, but there were many similarities. The greatest similarity was his calling the airline and the airplane. The FFA had guessed from Booth's description that the plane was a DC-10 and that the plane came in inverted. In retrospect, the dream description of the site of the crash resembled O'Hare International Airport, but not closely enough for anyone to guess in advance that that was where the accident would occur. The warning that wasn't. At 5 o'clock in the morning in 1979, Helen Tilstonson was awakened by an urgent knock at the door of her Philadelphia apartment at the sound of her mother calling, "Helen, are you there? Let me in." When she opened the door, her mother, who lived across the street, asked why Helen had been knocking on her door a few minutes earlier. Helen explained that she had gone to bed at 11 o'clock the night before and had not awakened until her mother's arrival. "But I saw you. I spoke to you," Mrs. Tiltson said, insisting that Helen had told her to follow her back to her house and not ask any questions. Then they heard an explosion. A gas leak in Mrs. Tilston's block had caused the blast. Her apartment was badly damaged. "If she had been asleep there at the time," a fire chief said later, "I doubt whether she would have got out alive." A psychic's prophecy of the untimely demise of a famous rock star seemed to come true when John Lennon was shot to death in 1980. This photograph of Lennon with his wife Yoko Ono in New York City appears on their last album. A fatal prediction. During an interview taped on August 23rd, 1980 for later broadcast, the psychic Alex Tanis made a prediction that came true before the year was out. The interview, conducted by Lee Spiegel, host of the NBC radio show Unexplained Phenomena, took place at the American Society of Psychical Research located on West 73rd Street, New York City, directly across the street from the Dakota Apartments. Spiegel, who planned to use the tape on an upcoming program, asked Tanis if he could predict something that would occur in the next few months and would be of interest to the many rock music fans in the audience. Tanis replied, "The prediction that I will make is that a very famous rock star will have an untimely death, and this can happen from this moment on. I say untimely death because there is something strange about his death, but it will affect the consciousness of many people because of his fame." The taped interview was played on the show September 5th, 1980. On December 8th, John Lennon, the world-famous rock musician, was shot to death at the door of the Dakota where he resided. Since Tanis had not named a specific person, Spiegel had drawn up a list of 6 possibilities. Rock star John Lennon was at the head of the list. Oh, shit. Anomalies, which I'll get to later. Speaking of shit, I think I'm going to go step in some. Have a good day.